SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Get ready for the fastest and flattest road race of your life, the 14th Annual Viking Half Marathon 10K and 5K in Greenwood, Mississippi. Set for Saturday, March the 22nd. Sign up now at VikingHalfMarathon.com or 662-453-4152.
Paid for by Greenwood Convention and Visitor Bureau, Chamber of Commerce.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Welcome back there, Rhino.
Howdy.
Well, you brought the good weather with you, I see. That was awesome out there today, huh? Man, can't beat it.
Picturesque.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Chamber of Commerce weather, I think, is how it is sometimes.
Put it on a postcard.
We could keep doing that all day, I guess, couldn't we? Well, quite the day we got in store for you. Sally Doty, director of the Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility. The acronym for that agency is BEAM, of course. She'll give us an update from the BEAM office and discuss some recent awards they announced last week. And then at 12:05, Representative Sam Creekmore. You know, he serves in the Mississippi House of Representatives, District 14. He's the chairman of Public Health and Human Services Cmte. Looking forward to those conversations, of course. Up there in Washington, we get started with that. The budget resolution in the House of Representatives is living on a prayer, as the famed John Bon Jovi song would say. He's having a little problem herding the cats up there in Washington. And there's some members who have said, nope, can't go for it, what's been proposed. And that means no bill, because you can't lose anybody. The margin is so tight right now, with some seats missing that will be eventually filled. You can't have anyone who defects to the other side. He said that he understands this is a very dicey situation. There may be one or more than one who currently oppose the resolution. But we'll get there. We're going to get everybody there, he said. He kind of lightheartedly stated, this is a prayer request. Just pray this through for us because it is high stakes and everybody knows it. Two House Republicans, Representatives Victoria Sparks of Indiana and Tim Burchett from Tennessee, they've already said they are nays, as has Representative Thomas Massey. He hasn't officially declared he's a nay, but he said he just sees too much spending. And about a dozen others say they're undecided. That's after meeting with the Speaker yesterday. Now, on the corner of Wall and Broad, that's where the New York Stock Exchange is located, we're witnessing a sell-off. And the reason we are is because of this craziness in Washington. No certainty, no confidence that they can get a deal done. Looming large are the Trump tax cuts. The Senate says, oh, we'll worry about that later. And the markets say, you better worry about it now, senators. In the House, we got people who say, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. Man, oh man, it's so frustrating. So, while the President of the United States has been busy with the, as Barack Obama famously called it, the pen and phone, he's been just laying out them executive orders like crazy. The Congress has been largely inactive. Now, no doubt, this is the biggest task they got on the table right now because guess what else happens? It's hard to believe. It's that time again, about 3 weeks. We run out of money. What are we going to do? Continuing resolution again. Just essentially says keep everything going at the same level. Well, the same level right now, according to the most recent Treasury reports showing revenues and expenses at the federal government, and that's through 4 months, we're on a run rate to produce a $2.5 trillion deficit. It was 1.8 last year. That's $700 billion more. Now, grant you, we're only 4 months into the fiscal year. I get it. And February will mark month 5. We'll get reports from the Treasury sometime in late March to give us an update there. But still, though, it doesn't bode well for reining in inflation, as an example, because guess what produces that? Borrowing money. And our federal government is addicted to borrowing money because nobody will make the tough decisions. Now, yesterday, Rhino, someone on the C Spire text line in your absence asked, who do we owe all this money to? Which is an absolute rational question. $36 trillion. Who do we owe? Now, I know we've been through this before, but a lot of people don't listen every time we're on. This is what we're talking about, given our current situation.
In short, a little bit to everybody and a lot to ourselves.
Correct. Now, the average person thinks it's China. We owe all that money to China. Even Rand Paul, the libertarian darling, I've seen him on the floor of the United States Senate saying, we keep spending like this, we're just going to have to keep borrowing money from China. Wrong, Senator. Disappointed in you for not knowing the truth and the facts. China, it turns out, presently holds $770 billion of U.S. debt. We owe $36 trillion totally. So, in other words, they own about 2% of it. It turns out China historically has been the foreign country.
You mean Japan?
Japan has been, pardon me, the foreign country that owns the most debt of all those foreign nations. You know who's in third place? United Kingdom. This is the one that shocked me now, Rhino. Luxembourg. They own $371 billion. So think about that. Luxembourg owns half as much as China does. How many dang people are there in Luxembourg? Can't be that big.
Well, let's see what the Google box says.
Well, what's China? A couple of billion? Something like that?
Luxembourg, according to the World Bank, as of 2 years ago now, 666,430 people.
And they have $371 billion of U.S. Treasuries. I found that to be bizarre. The Cayman Islands. How many people are there? They got $305 billion. And here's why, because you know how many?
73,038.
Oh, my gosh. So this is an asset, of course, owned by the 73,000 people, and it's a very reliable one because the United States is not going to default on its debt. If it should, expect global economic collapse. And it won't. You know why? Because we just have to crank up the old print machines to borrow more and pay the the principal and interest here. So, as it turns out, foreign holders of debt come in at about $7.5 trillion of the 36 owed. Government institutions and agencies own a similar amount, about $7 trillion, very close. So about half of what is not owned, as you described it earlier, owed to ourselves. About half is to other government agencies, half is to foreign nations. In total, a little over $14 trillion of the 36, meaning that $23 trillion that we owe is to ourselves. And who's within the category of ourselves? The Federal Reserve System, mutual funds, depository financial institutions, state and local governments, PERS, pension systems.
Every single citizen and every future generation.
Yes. Insurance companies, they invest those premiums you pay them as part of their portfolio is invested in U.S. Treasuries because they're reliable. You know you're going to get paid.
It's so nice of Uncle Sam to think of the newborns when they're brought into this world and immediately saddled with 6 figures of federal debt.
Oh, man. So this is a big old problem. We got some more to talk about. There was a great article in the Wall Street Journal related to this subject matter this morning we'll get to later in the program. Coming right back. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
We're rolling.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're back with you. So we were asked, let's see, who asked the question? Jeff and Carrollton, do the questions that loan us money have a balanced budget? Japan is expected to produce a surplus for their fiscal year 2026. They've been producing deficits. I don't know that that's totally relevant. I mean, I can see.
Are they really loaning us money, or are they purchasing our debt?
They're purchasing our debt, so which is the same thing. I mean, that's still loaning us money. Well, what do you see that's different about that?
I mean, just from we have debt, they buy it because they know we're good for it, versus us going to them going, hey, you got 20 I can bum till next week?
That's a good point, but the Fed, the Treasury does auction off bills and notes and bonds, and so I guess you could say that's kind of a subtle way of saying, hey, can I borrow 20 from you? Can I bum it? I promise I'll pay you back, right? Yeah, what a mess, though, man. It truly is. Mo says Luxembourg is rated first in the world based on GDP. I didn't know that, per capita GDP. I don't believe the Federal Reserve is connected to our federal government. Yeah, that's can be construed as true. I mean, it's kind of a quasi sort of entity, if you will. And the main reason they hold treasuries is they buy them from banks to increase liquidity. So, meaning banks have more. It's called quantitative easing. You guys have heard that, and that just helps the banks with their cash, their assets, their capital available to loan, with the anticipation and the expectation that would boost the economy.
There's just one glaring issue with that.
What's that?
It devalues the dollar on a day-by-day basis.
Correct. That is absolutely right. So it's quite the mess we have. That's the main thing. $36 trillion in debt and counting. And it will be interesting to see how the House, we talked earlier in the last segment about the Speaker, Mike Johnson, struggling to get his caucus whipped in line there to support a budget resolution. What are they going to do about the debt ceiling? Now, the president has said, you recall he did this before they even got in session. Let's go ahead and take care of that so we don't have to mess with it, because there is a way that the Democrats could muddy up that process and hold the Republicans hostage over the debt ceiling. Who's going to blink first sort of deal. So it is being rumored, at least. I can't really pin this on the president at this point, this figure. It is absolutely true that he requested an increased extension of it. But the expectation is we'll see $4 trillion, an increase of the debt ceiling of $4 trillion over 2 years. Thus, the expectation is that, we're going to keep spending $2 trillion more than what we have. That's the way those numbers work. Pretty straightforward. Incredible. So I think it's great, again, that the Doge team is in place and they are identifying all this insane spending that needs to go. Of course, keep in mind that a lot of it has already committed and the services have been provided. And what I'm talking about, I guess, specifically is in the cancellation of contracts, which is fine, except work done to date. So it's a little disingenuous to say, we canceled the $5 billion contract, except $4 billion of services have already been provided and accepted, and you got to pay $4 billion. So what's remaining, to the extent that the contract permits such cancellation, and government contracts usually do provide a fair amount of discretion on the part of government to just cancel contracts. It's a risk you're willing to take typically as a vendor to the government because it's rare that it happens. So just keep that in mind when you see these the value being promoted, the amount of all the contracts being canceled, that many of them already in process. We've already either paid the money or about to pay the money. It's been what's called encumbered. So it just means hopefully we don't do stupid things in the future, like entering into some of these crazy contracts. And we're also finding, as you know, that there are lots of these NGOs that are connected to members of Congress, and there's all kinds of shady stuff. I know you're shocked at that.
They make less than $200,000 a year, and they somehow walk away from being congressional leaders, and they're suddenly millionaires.
And this is one of the ways they do it, and a lot of that doesn't even show up in their financial reports. I guess I wouldn't call it as just widespread, but they're a fair number. And by the way, it's not unique to any party.
No.
Don't say, well, that's a Democrat thing. No, not really. It's unfortunately, you find it in both.
Mr. Cut Spending himself, Senator Paul from the great state of Kentucky.
Yes.
Has a handful of NGOs tied to his name.
He absolutely does. And this morning, what broke, Rhino, was Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, the Democrat from Rhode Island.
That guy.
I knew that was coming. I was setting you up for that. He's, let me say, one of my least favorite members of the Senate. It turns out
I call him Whitehead because he's about as welcome.
It turns out that he backed legislation that funneled millions to his wife's environmental nonprofit, Ocean Conservancy.
Oh, the humanity.
$2.7 million she was paid, while the group raked in $14.2 million in federal grants. In these stupid federal grants. Unbelievable. So you're a bad person there, Senator Whitehouse. You're always You're one of the ones that always rants and raves and rails about we're cutting all this spending to pay for tax cuts for the rich. That just grinds my gears. That narrative totally grinds my gears.
No, they don't want taxes cut because they want as much money coming to the federal government so they can funnel it to themselves.
As did the senator did here. Correct. There's one way to fix all this, is to insist that we have to balance the budget. The reason we have all this craziness is because the money is so accessible. It's just easy. Oh, yeah, no problem. Even though we're only taking in $4.5 trillion, $5 trillion, and we're spending 7.3, no problem. Just make it's actually just an entry on a keyboard, honestly, to do it. And money's in your account. No big deal. That's exactly how we operate the federal government these days. It's disgusting. I was sad that you weren't in yesterday because our favorite MSNBC host is now looking for a job. The old race lady, Joy Reid. She's out of there. And boy, it was like a pall had been blanketed over the MSNBC cadre. Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, they were irate about this move. They're cutting 2 anchors of color and hurting the people who make all the shows possible. Unbelievable.
No, they're just taking out the trash that should have been taken out years ago for being a racist piece of crap.
So this, by the way, this is a network that's got 2 white hosts. I don't even know who those are. I mean, she's one of them, but she meets another checkbox, right? So,
Maddow.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Meanwhile,
she's almost worthy of that guy.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the governor of the great state of Wisconsin, the dairy state, that's how it's known. What a loon this guy is. If you had the words tone deaf in the dictionary, his picture's right next to it. He has been blasted for replacing the word mother with inseminated person. Oh, my gosh. Person for man.
Where are the feminists?
I don't know. They don't ever say anything. They're afraid to cross that line. Also,
how is that not dehumanizing to women?
It completely is. What about paternity is now substituted with parentage? And father is natural parent. That's in a bill. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. CC in Senatobia says Maddow is trying her best to be ashamed of herself for being white. Oh, gosh. What's the latest on Patel opening investigation on Biden weaponization of DOJ? I'm not really sure. I haven't seen much along those lines. I know that he is cleaning house and certainly making it known that he's in charge and things are going to be different.
There was some scuttlebutt that there were some shredders going at the headquarters prior to his confirmation.
Okay, how about that? Meantime, of course, this deal about having to give us 5 things that you did, it's a little confusing, I thought. And as far as you don't, you do, and now it appears that it's kind of discretionary, right? Some agencies are telling their people, don't respond, don't do that. Some are saying do. And now they're saying, well, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll be terminated. Because I haven't seen any reports of like mass terminations today, right, for people who didn't send something in by 11:59, the deadline. So there seems to be a lot of confusion and a lot of just conflicting reports and information on what's going on there. So what else we got on the C Spire text line? Richard from Rankin County says, can I bomb $20 billion? 601-879-4395 if you want to join the conversation. Gary in the Berg says quantitative easing occurs on the 18th hole at golf courses on a regular basis. Double press to get even. Love it there, Gary. We used to be, Gary, in the days, double till you puke is what we used to say. Let's see. Wouldn't the man be the inseminator person, says Jeff in Carrollton. This in reference to the loony governor of Wisconsin. That it is crazy. I mean, there's a legitimate bill. We're not making this up. That would completely change the way in government all these various individuals would be referred to, or groups. And this is in their budget recommendation. Word previously used, wife or husband, would be changed to spouse, mother, inseminated person, paternity, patronage, father, natural parent, man, woman, changed to person. You can't assume. Isn't that what they tell you? Oh, my God. I mean, just because you see a
dude in a dress
doesn't necessarily mean they're a dude, right? It's all based on their feelings, as you like to say. Can you believe they're spending time on this in the halls of government in the dairy state of Wisconsin? Keep doing it. Was it Stephen A. Smith saying, people are over this? This party lacks common sense. He may be the only person that could save the party should he suit up and run. He's telling them. He's telling them. Even, what's his name? Mayor? Bill Mayer? He's telling them. You want to keep losing? Keep doing that. He's so right, man. Totally agree. To help with paying off, let's see, are there still companies or entities that issue bearer bonds to help with paying off debt or paying down debts? No, that's not how that works. So, sure, companies sell bonds as an alternative to selling stock to raise capital, because selling stock dilutes the stock. You get more shareholders, and therefore the stock typically will react. The market will react to that, and the price will pull back. That's very common. In fact, there are companies that you may find this a little surprising. There are companies who don't have any debt, and of course are public, and they'll go borrow money for capital because that's cheaper than selling stock, paying the interest on the debt from a bank, a financial institution. They can get prime or thereabouts, and the wizards, the financial wizards, will do the math on that and say, yeah, that's actually less money, less costly overall to the company than selling stock. Because you're obviously, when you sell stock, once again, you're diluting your equity. Let's see. My friend has 10 kids. His nickname is the Inseminator on a C Spire text line. Oh, my gosh. Gerard, is Bill Mayer secret Republican conservative but just can't come out because HBO would cancel him, says Chris from Oxford. I don't know if I'd go that far, Chris, but I think he's become just a common sense person, just like Stephen A. Smith. If you listen to him and what he has to say about all this nuttiness going on, it's just crazy, and that's not right. Common sense says, I've seen him say this recently, you probably have, that
dudes in dresses
shouldn't be playing in female sports. Has he not said that? He's been sounding that horn. This is crazy, and he's been warning the Democrat Party, if you do that, you're going to continue to get slammed at the ballot box. But yet they keep leaning into it. By the way, with respect, let's see if I can find it here, to the what 5 things that you did request last week. Senator Amy Klobuchar, she tweeted, she published on X, 5 things I did last week. I successfully asked you, talking about Musk, to rehire 300 nuclear and avian flu workers you accidentally fired, pressed you to pay attention to rising household costs, stood up for vets, fought against your tax cuts for the rich, stood with Ukraine instead of Russia. Isn't she something? She's so clever. Oh, my gosh. Well, so I don't know, Chris, if I would go quite that far. I just think that there are some people in their party that say, guys, this platform ain't working. And
you can be classically liberal without being a bleeding heart loon.
Correct. And I think that's what's happened to the Democrat Party. Certainly it happened in the 2024 election.
They've been taken over by the bleeding hearts.
Yep. Right here at home, yesterday, down there at the Capitol, the Mississippi State Senate passed its tax reform legislation. You recall Senator Josh Harkins joined MidDays last week. He said, I got the bill. He held it up. And I think that was in response to Speaker of the House Jason White, who was on with Richard, I believe, earlier that day, that said they don't have a bill yet, so we can't say anything about it. So he wanted us to know they had one. It has been officially filed. It passed out of committee Friday, and it passed yesterday 34-15, 4 Republicans voting with Democrats. 4 Republicans voted with Democrats. And Senator Angela Hill said, I'm just trying to follow my party's platform. And I believe her objection is the bill increases taxes, specifically fuel taxes. And so she was a no vote. I believe Senator Chad McMahon. Help me out here, Rhino. We may have to look that up. I think of the 4, I know those were 2. I would suspect maybe Senator Kathy Chisholm was among those who joined with Democrats in opposing this legislation. And there was one more. It could have been Senator Jeff Moore, as a matter of fact. So now that's going to be proceeded down to the House. Rhino has, of course, defined what that procession looks like. So now we got the House bill and the Senate bill going to the House, and we'll see what happens there. The Senate bill, different from the House in that it does not fully eliminate the income tax. It does reduce it down to 2.99%. Keep in mind, it's already headed to 4% based on the legislation that passed in 2022. It eliminated the 4% bracket in 23, cut the remaining 5% bracket to 4.7 for tax year 24. That's the way your income taxes are being computed right now for your current tax return, the 2024 tax return. However, in 2025, you should see a slight improvement in your net pay as a result of the state income tax declining to now 4.4% for tax year, calendar year 2025. Next year, we'll take another bite at that 5% bracket, and it'll go down to 4% under the Senate bill. It would then decrease to 2.99% in annual 20.25% increments. 4 years, essentially, eliminate another 1%. So currently we're at 4.4. By 2030, under the Senate bill, we'd be at 2.99. Then there's no change to the general sales tax. The sales tax on groceries goes down to 5% from the current 7%, and then 3 cents per year increase in the gas tax. Coming right back, final segment of this hour in the Element Well studio.
Be sure.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio on the C Spire text line. Why would it be 2.99%? Marketing sounds better than 3%. No, it's actually it's kind of throwing a shot across the bow at the other states, because other states, especially those that border us, they are busy reforming their income tax rates as well. Arkansas, for example, last year they lowered the state's top individual tax rate from 4.4 to 3.9. And so it's really just, okay, if you guys are thinking about going down to 3, we're going to go ahead and put a hold my beer on you. We're going to 2.99. It's really about that more than anything. So we got these two competing measures, one in the House, one in the Senate. The Lieutenant Governor, Delbert Hosemann, was on Mornings with Richard Cross this morning discussing the Senate's version and laid it out just as we have. He expressed some concerns about some pressures of spending and expenses that the state may bear in the future. I have those concerns as well. The big thing is Medicaid, especially with this budget being debated up there in Washington. Cuts to Medicaid are on the table. Of course, last week the president said, no, I don't want to cut Medicaid. But that was after he had already signaled to lawmakers, yeah, cut Medicaid. And they sent them on their way and said, go find $880 to $1 billion to $1 trillion over 10 years to flush out of Medicaid. So you see just how complicated this is with the competing measures. I'm honestly not sure what's going to happen. I don't get the impression that either chamber is willing to budge. And so if that happens, we would get nothing. Now, I know there are a lot of folks that think that, any increase of any taxes anywhere is a problem. And so in the case of both bills, there is an increase in fuel taxes. This is something that transportation commissioners have requested, that the executive director of MDOT, Brad White, has requested. And their basis for that request is, if we had more reliable recurring revenue, we could pull down more federal dollars to improve Mississippi's roadways. And that's the basis for that. Plus the fact that inflation, the cost of road maintenance and construction, through the roof, up substantially over the last 5-6 years for a variety of reasons. Petroleum, labor, fewer companies involved in that business and that industry is what I'm told. We get fewer responses to bids and RFPs from the Department of Transportation. So they're looking for more money. And I get it. There are people who are not happy about that. And, of course, with the House bill, you also have an increase in the general sales tax of 1.5%. Many of the members of the Public Employees Retirement System, their association specifically, they also have weighed in on the legislation. They're concerned that the Senate bill does not include a big chunk of money for PERS. The House bill would, as you know, redirect the first $100 million of annual net proceeds produced by the Mississippi Lottery Corporation to the Public Employees Retirement System. $100 million until such time as it hit certain metrics that are used to just gauge the overall financial health of the program. That would take a while, by the way, at $100 million a year. The Senate bill, on the other hand, says we're going to take that up separately. Now, the Senate has passed a bill that would create a new tier in the Public Employees Retirement System. Just means everybody that enters the system, I think it's March 1st, 2026, they would no longer participate in the present current tier, which is Tier 4, which is a complete defined benefit plan. It's standard sort of PERS. Rather, they would go into one that's a hybrid. Part defined benefit, part defined contribution. The difference, of course, we've explained before, defined benefit plan, Your benefits continue for as long as you live, no matter how much you put into it. Even if you grossly exceed in your benefit payments, the amount you invested and your employer invested, and the returns on those investments. Defined contribution plans, much what you're used to in the private sector, 401ks, IRAs, etc. Roth plans, you see the value, the amount, the balance in those plans. You retire, you start drawing out. Once that money's gone, it's gone. That's the difference. So this new Tier 5 would help a little bit, but way down the road. Not really anything significant right now. Still doesn't mean we're out of the woods with respect to PERS. Time for a break. Fox News, SuperTalk News. When we come back, Sally Doty, Director of BEAM.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We are live in the Element Wealth studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Sally Doty. She serves as the director of the Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility, also known as BEAM, B-E-A-M. Whew, Director, good to see you. Thanks for coming in. You got one of those long titles.
I do, but don't you like that acronym?
I do like the acronym.
Yes,
I'll agree. I thought it was clever. Yeah, I like it. Some of the acronyms that they affix to these bills, I kind of have to scratch my head about. Well, but that's a good one. I like it.
There's so many acronyms. Every now and then I can do an entire sentence almost with acronyms, and I hate myself when I do that.
Well, of course, you're diving into my old line of work, and that's all we were initials and acronyms. And you know what IBM stands for?
Oh, I think not what I think it is. Tell me.
Well,
I thought it was International Business Machines.
Well, that's the name, official name of the company. But there was a time during their heyday of the 60s, 70s. It wasn't unusual for you to get a call to say an IBM employee say you're being transferred, and your choice was you either take the transfer or you're out. It wasn't any back then. That was very common. So we used IBM to create the nickname I've Been Moved.
I've been moved.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. So tell us what's going on at BEAM.
So we are continuing in our process to reach every residential location in Mississippi with high-speed internet service. And we are finishing up one small grant. We have another larger grant that is going to construction through providers all around the state. So we've made a second round of awards in that. And then we are opening up our final pot of grant money. We're going to open that up towards the end of the week.
Okay.
And that is the largest amount of money. It's that $1 billion. Billion. Make sure I say the B. $1 billion that is available to reach every remaining rural unserved location. So I wanted to talk about that and let you know where we are in the process.
Is this a winner-take-all deal? $1 billion? You're not going to award $1 billion to one vendor. So.
No, we're going to open up an application portal. We have defined the state into 193 project areas.
Okay.
So we started with supervisor districts in the counties, and we looked at those supervisor districts, and we looked at how many unserved locations were there. Then we also looked at what it's going to cost to reach those. You know, some are more expensive than others. The more spread out homes are, the more expensive they are to reach, and that's why private money has not gone to them.
Okay.
So we looked at the cost. We looked at the the number of unserved, and then we also looked at geographic boundaries. Is there a railroad down the middle of that supervisor district? Because that's hard to get across. Yep. Is there a river? Is there something? Is there a national forest?
Yeah.
So we took all of that into consideration. We did a tremendous amount of research and work, and we have come up with these 193 project areas, and now we are going to open up our application process. We had a pre-qualification process that we ran back in December, where we asked the providers, if you're going to apply, if you're going to be a part of this, if you want some of this $1 billion, we need to go ahead and assess your financial and technical capabilities.
Okay.
So we opened up that pre-qualification process, and we have certified 23 different providers in Mississippi, most of whom I'm very familiar with. We've worked with in other projects. So those 23 will be the ones that come in and apply for this fund. We will score it. We've got the scoring rubric already out there. It's been out for probably a year now, I think. So we have the scoring rubric. We will look at the projects, but basically it is who can come in with that lower amount. So because we want to put in the least amount of taxpayer dollars as possible.
Sure.
That is the goal. So we open that up. We'll probably run 2 rounds, I feel sure, because I don't think we'll get everything served that first round. So we will open it up for 45 days, take some time to score it. Then we have a state statutory period of time we have to accept some objections on.
Yeah.
So we think we will have that first round ready to go in probably final determinations in June or mid-June by the time we get through all those steps. Then we'll see what's left, and we will run another round of applications. So same process. We'll get through with that probably, we hope, by August, end of the summer. And then if we have a few stragglers, which we probably will, some odd locations here and there, and they may be really high-cost locations, residences that are very far removed from other locations.
Sure.
Might be very appropriate for a LEO, a lower satellite. We have not only Starlink, but the Amazon folks. They're in our pre-qualification process as well. So, it might be appropriate for that technology. And then we'll probably do some direct negotiation. That's in our plan and allowable. If we have some stragglers, we'll look at the provider next door and say, hey, what would it take for you to build out to this one?
Yeah.
So that is our plan. We will see what happens as we undertake this plan. We have a lot of information on our website. Certainly we've been communicating with those 23 and other providers as well. Interestingly, our co-ops are not going to participate in this. They have already done a tremendous amount of work, and they say they've got enough on their plate. So it will be other providers.
Are all participating? Are all the electric co-ops participating in this program?
I said they're not.
Okay, I apologize.
They're not. No,
okay, that's what I thought.
No, they're not. No, I checked with them and said, hey,
yeah.
Y'all did not pre-qualify. And they said, they all have built out so fast, and many of them have built out their entire service territory.
Okay.
So the co-ops are not participating in this, and we will have other providers. But again, I've got 23 providers, and we think we will have good coverage throughout the state.
Yeah. Okay. So are you expecting the vast majority of them to respond here, or do they have the capabilities to handle the service area that you're covering in this?
They do. They do. And I think we have about 125,000. I don't know the exact number. I've texted my deputy director to find out that exact number, but it's about 125,000 unserved locations that are eligible for this program.
Okay.
And so we will be working to reach all of those, and it'll be in different blocks.
Now, the organization was established, was it 22?
22.
All right. So you've been busy since then, doing a lot.
We have been. So I was the executive director at the Public Utilities staff. When I left the Senate, I took an appointment over there, and my first responsibility when I walked in the door is we had some CARES Act money that had been designated for co-ops to build out broadband and to administer that fund and figure out who should get how much. So we did that. That was $75 million in investment, and the co-ops matched that. So those have been partners in this business for a good while now.
Yeah.
So that was a very large investment. Then our office applied. We had some smaller providers who said, hey, there's a federal grant. We need a governmental partner. And I said, okay, let's go. Actually, the governor gave me the green light to partner with them. So that was the next one we got was a $32 million grant, and we are finishing that up. We got that, I think, we're awarded that in 21, and we're just now finishing up. But we have extended that grant and really are squeezing out every nickel. We've been doing budget modifications to do some extra projects. So that $32 million served about 10,000 locations in the state, and we're closing all of those right now. I went to a ceremony in Bruce just last week for their fiber lighting for their project with Arriva and Bruce Telephone Company.
Yeah.
So we are finishing up that $32 million. Then we have gotten underway ARPA funding of $162 million. We did one round and got that out the door. We just recently, within the last month, kind of completed the second round, which was $32 million there to reach about 10,000 locations.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's scattered all over the state, and now we are headed into the final program, which is BEAD, B-E-A-D. It stands for Broadband Equity Accessibility Deployment.
Yeah, I'm looking at that on your website.
So we did a little riff on that those letters to get our acronym, but we're different.
Okay. You got some more stuff you want to talk about in another segment?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. We got Sally Doty. She's the director of the Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility, also known as BEAM. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth Studio.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth Studio, being bumped in by the Queen of Soul. Sally Doty, Director of Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility, is our guest. All right. Sally, tell us about this big RFP you guys have that's due today. Right?
And actually, this is away from my broadband responsibilities. Yeah. We were talking about this. I graduated from the W, and the Math and Science School is there. And there's an RFP. It's a bit puzzling. All of a sudden, out of the blue, MDE has issued this RFP. I'll try to use all my acronyms. Yeah. For the continuation, or where MSMS, which is the Math and Science School, a residential high school for math and science students, for really our top students, where it should be in the future. Yep. So it's been on the W's campus for 34 years. Admittedly, I think there are some issues with their facilities. But, you know, I live in Brookhaven, represented Brookhaven in the Senate for 10 years, and we have the Mississippi School of the Arts. So it's kind of the sister school. It's one of the two specialty schools. We have the Math and Science School and the Art School. And, you know, it's always a struggle for those specialty schools to get funding or to, you know, upgrade their facilities. And I think there are some issues, certainly, with their facilities facilities on the campus of the W. But I'm not sure that just plopping it to another institution is the answer. I have 2 children that went to Mississippi State. I go to all the ball games. I also served on the Public Property Committee when I was in the Senate and visited Mississippi State every year and heard their build-out plans. And, also from having those kids there, I know they're not, 300 empty dorm rooms for these MSMS students just sitting waiting at Mississippi State. So it would take an infrastructure investment if the school were to be moved. So why not just make that infrastructure investment on the W campus where the school has been extremely successful for the past 34 years. So, it was just a bit puzzling. All of a sudden, this RFP is issued. I believe the school had 11 days to respond, and it was only for the W and Mississippi State. If the math and science school is up for grabs, why didn't we include Ole Miss Southern? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not quite understanding where this is coming from, and just am not pleased with this process that is going on.
MDE decision? Who made the decision?
The state, it's the state board. The state board,
Board of Education
in their December meeting, created a subcommittee to study the issue of infrastructure upgrades for math and science school.
Okay. Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it was right at Christmas because there's a board member from my town, so I called him immediately, and he was getting out of town for Christmas, so it was all done right at Christmas, and then I think when they finally got the RFP out, 11 days to respond.
Wow. That is a short time frame.
It's a very short time. That sounds like somebody already has their
got it
together.
Wired already.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So, we I'm a W graduate. I think they do a great job with these kids. I've been on campus. It wasn't there when I graduated, even though it's been in existence for quite some time. But I've been back on campus and been very actively involved. And MSMS is just doing a great job, and if they could have some additional funding to upgrade their infrastructure, I think it would be a real win-win for everybody involved.
I've heard nothing but positive things about MSMS.
Yes.
Nothing but positive.
I just don't know if you want to plop, 16 and 17-year-olds over. Doesn't Mississippi State have our largest campus? Aren't they about over 20,000?
In Starkville, I believe that's right.
Yeah. I'm not sure. And I give that from the perspective, of course, as a mother, but also being involved with that art school that is in Brookhaven. I've been a host parent. They had a host parent program. They don't do it anymore, but I was always a host parent for an art student in Brookhaven, and those kids are away from home the first time, and Gerard, usually these are kids who are coming from our rural institutions because it's not kids from Oak Grove or Rankin County,
more urban areas.
Urban areas, because those urban areas have schools that can really, perform these functions.
Yeah.
These are kids, these are kids who are smart as a whip, or either really talented if you're thinking about the art school, but are from a small school district that just cannot have the resources for whatever reason to give that type of education.
Yeah.
So I just don't believe that plopping them at our largest institution is the answer. I think the answer is just providing the funding to upgrade the infrastructure so they can have more modern dorms, because I do believe they are living in the dorms that I lived in many, many, many moons ago. Yes.
Wow. Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware that was going on.
Not many people are, I don't believe. And, really that's something that should happen at the legislative level, right? So I'm
would think so.
Sure. Yeah.
It seems like that's a little much for the purview of the Board of Education, would seem. But, I mean, that would be based on law, right? And I would think.
It's all set by statute.
Yeah.
All
as far as what their authority is.
It is. It is, but but I know the art school and the School for Math and Science is creature of statute, and I did not pull it up and read it, but from working on it in the past, because I know I had to work extremely hard for the art school. So much of it is run by MDE. They don't have a local board, and I'm sure the Math and Science school is the same. Okay. So they were subject to, the board had to really get into some of their issues. But I just wanted to bring that up. It's been troubling and really puzzling to me why this is happening and the process that is being used.
Interesting. Something else I thought about with respect to this internet build-out, broadband build-out. Is there anything going on in Washington now with the Doge team and the Trump administration just putting a chainsaw to almost everything? Or is there some risk there? Like some of this ARPA funding, for example, I don't think all that's gone out the door yet, right? That was passed under Joe Biden. So is there some risk there? So
we have been in contact with them, and I work under the Department of Finance and Administration, and certainly they have been in even closer contact. So there is not, I believe, any danger in this funding for actual broadband infrastructure build out, because it's a it's a specific project, right? Okay. So we don't think that any of that funding is in danger. If anything, we think that there will be some relaxation of some of the federal rules that were kind of added on to this, really some policy issues that were added on to these broadband grants. Because I'm going to tell you, this money was allocated to the state of Mississippi in the summer of 23. I went to Washington. We learned what our allocation was. And even prior to that time, we had been working, trying to do all of these different, jump through all these hoops and dot the I's and cross the T's. The Biden administration really micromanaged this a good bit. And so I think there needs to be more authority for the states. Our map is better than the federal map. We know exactly where these locations are. All of these approvals that we have to get from the federal government, in fact, that is what has pushed our application date out, as we keep having to get approvals. We're down to, we had to have approval for all of our locations, all of these residential locations. We've been fussing over 13 locations over in the past couple of weeks. And we know the true status of those 13 locations. The folks sitting in Washington at their desks do not. So we think that there will be some relaxation of the rules, and that will be easier for us to get this money out the door and easier for our providers to bill that out in a quicker fashion. Okay. So these folks can have internet. Okay. So if folks want to know if they currently don't have access to broadband and they want to know what's the status and when could they expect it, how can they figure that out? The best way is to go to our map, which is at our agency website, beam.ms.gov. And I think you can put in Mississippi broadband map and it'll go to it. You can see your location. You can email us at info@beam.gov. Info@beam.gov. Any questions, we're glad to answer that. We got a phone number up there too. We're glad to talk to you and work you through anything. I'm looking at it. It's well done. It's easy to read and understand. Yeah. It's a good tool. So appreciate you guys doing that. Sally Doty, Director of the Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility, a.k.a. BEAM, has been our guest. Thanks for coming in, Director. Thank you. Yep. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
It's in their blood, All roads lead to another road for renegades, rebels, and roads.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi in the Element Wealth Studio. Are you thinking about or planning for retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. On the C Spire text line, that's 601-879-4395. The 5 things you did email is an old manager trick to see if people were paying attention and being accountable. Van Halen's manager would do that with the bowl of M&Ms with no green ones in it. If he walked in and saw the bowl had green M&Ms in it, he knew the promoter was not paying attention to details, and he needed to take a closer look at what else was it done. That's absolutely true. So, Rhino, in my old college days, I had wasn't a roommate, but across the hall in the fraternity house, he was involved at the university with a couple other students that would organize, I guess, and coordinate, schedule entertainment in the Coliseum. And I remember when he first started doing that, usually those organizations, the bands, the artists, they'd send you their contract. And you'd have to review the contract, attempt to make some changes that they would approve and sign off on. And then, of course, that's all executed with a written document binding contract. And it absolutely is true. He showed it to me. This was back in the 70s. Because of a thing called a rider,
and the rider usually has all the specifications needed for their equipment, for load out, load in, for the stage itself, for the green room where they get food ready. Yeah. I remember. So I remember one of them was no red M&Ms, but the one that really I thought was funny was pimento cheese sandwiches had to be provided with the ends cut off and then cut into 4 triangles. I'm not exaggerating on this, am I? No.
This is what they do. Pimento cheese, cut the ends off, and then cut the sandwiches into 4 pieces.
And a part of that is because in order to perform at your best, you want everything to be as similar or the same as possible, so you limit variables.
That's absolutely true.
So if you're used to having a little tiny finger food pimento cheese sandwich before you go on stage, that's going to be in the rider. They get accused, a lot of the rock stars of the day got accused of being divas because they put stuff in the rider like the no green, no red, no brown M&Ms and people didn't realize, there's an actual reason for that. It wasn't just them being divas. Now, in fairness, there are tons of people in the entertainment industry that their rider is nothing more than, well, my contract doesn't pay me enough, doesn't give me enough of what I think I'm worth. You better have me a case of Cristal or Dom Perignon waiting in that. And it never gets drank in the green room. It gets taken on the bus, and they just have a pile.
Well, speaking of, similar to that, years ago, I was Greens chairman at Annandale for 3 years when we had the pro tournament there. And so the PGA travels around the country visiting. This was monthly. They go to the courses that host PGA events, and it's somebody from the Professional Golfers Association that would ride the course with the superintendent and me as the Greens chairman and drop balls in the bunkers because they want it the same everywhere. The consistency and then the speed of the greens. So to your point, they want it basically as close as possible to the same everywhere they go. And I get it. It's entertainment. It's money-making entertainment is what it's all about. Now,
the reason you had rock bands that were particular and they would use the M&M trick is because, especially after Kiss hit the scene, everybody all of a sudden wanted to start using pyrotechnics. And if you're unfamiliar with pyrotechnics, that big term, it's fireworks inside. You're basically creating sparks and fire right next to the people playing the instruments on the stage. So if your rider calls for, say, a 48-foot stage or something like that, and all of the pyrotechnics are set up for a 48-foot stage, and you say, yeah, we got a 48-foot stage, and it's 38 feet, well, when you set up all that pyrotechnics, you're a heck of a lot closer to the fire than you're supposed to be.
That makes sense. I get it. I'm not actually sure that I agree that's what's going on here. I think, because you've heard even the president and Musk say, we think there are employees out there that don't even check their email, right? You've heard that. So some of it is just to see who's actually working for the government as much as anything, as much as it is who's paying attention, I guess, which is what eliminating the green M&Ms out of the bowl, that would be more about attention to very minute details to make it really consistent from venue to venue. Big T from Coffeyville talking about the Senate and House tax bills. 3 cents a year on gas. I thought it was just going up 5 cents a gallon. Yeah, let's explain that again. The House bill is a 5% sales tax on your fuel purchases. You buy $100 worth of gas, you're going to pay $5 under this new tax as a new imposed sales tax on fuel. The Senate bill is terms out at 9 cents per gallon. So presently you pay 18.4 cents of Mississippi excise tax. This would add 9 cents to it over 3 years, 26, 27, 28. And then it would actually index the excise tax for inflation going forward so that it would rise based on the inflation of road construction and maintenance. If we'd have done that in 1987, the last time we had any adjustment to the excise tax, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. But it's been static at 18.4% excise tax, the 49th lowest in the country since 1987. So it's just different approaches. One is just a percent sales tax, and the other is an excise tax. Excise taxes are always levied based on a quantity, is the way to think about it. In this case, 9 cents additional per gallon. And sales taxes are imposed on the purchase value, the transaction, the total transaction amount. You buy $100 of gas, you pay $5. So you'd have to know how many gallons did you buy for that $100 and to determine what the excise tax is. The thing about the excise tax is, doesn't matter what the price of fuel is. It's that amount per gallon. It's based on the volume, whereas in the House bill, the sales tax is really agnostic to the volume. It is imposed on the purchase price. So a little different. Also, moving money around is all it is. Not true. I would encourage you to read, again, the article that we published, I wrote a couple of weeks ago, explaining the House bill, and look in particular, pay attention to the examples included in the article. You could drill down into those and see how it affects various taxpayer scenarios. So I know it's popular. You hear the retort a lot. Hey, that's just a tax swap. Well, if I gave you $1, or you gave me $1, let's put it that way, and I gave you $5 back, I guess you could call that a swap, but I'd say that's a pretty good deal. So it depends on your individual situation, whether or not you are paying more in the way of income tax. If you aren't, perhaps you're retired and your income is not subject to income tax. And then you got to look further than that, drill down even further. How much do you spend on groceries? How much do you spend on non-groceries? How much do you spend on fuel? There's no doubt that the House bill is more tilted toward those who work and pay income taxes. In general, they're going to get a tax break. If you have a low income, you may experience a small tax break, or overtime is what would likely happen, because you're already not paying hardly any income taxes, if at all. And then if you're retired, it depends on how you spend your money. If you spend more on groceries than you do non-groceries and fuel, you're going to get an overall tax break. If not, you may pay a little bit more, but it doesn't amount to a lot. But you are helping the working people of the state in this particular bill is the point I'm making. The PERS community, the Public Employees Retirement System, they're concerned that the Senate does not make any accommodations for the PERS program in its legislation. And, you know, there's an association, Rhino, Mississippi Retired Public Employees Association, and they're out on social media talking about the Senate bill, and they're encouraging people to call their legislators and say you need to let them know that they're not doing anything for PERS here, and that's a problem. So I guess the point is you ain't going to please everybody. That is for sure. It just depends on, I think, a combination of how it affects you personally, what you think about the two measures philosophically, mechanically, all the above. So this is what they say. It is time to make calls to the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, and legislative members because $100 million, which comes out of the House bill, is not enough. The Senate bill has no accommodations, no funding for PERS. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Reed says, I still prefer the Senate bill version on fuel. I'd prefer universal school choice too, but that's not happening. Gotcha. Well, like I said, there are a lot of folks that have different opinions on this. Here's one that I would say is counter to Reed's. This is from Darren in Jackson. He says, stop the income tax, ! Stop punishing people for making money. So, it's pretty clear, isn't it, Rhino, that everybody's on the same page.
About as clear as mud.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure what to say other than you got two competing measures with two different approaches, and they'll take up each other's legislation.
I still stand by my original assessment that the House bill is the best bill, but they really screwed up when they tried to reinvent the wheel with, okay, we've got an excise tax, we're going to put a sales tax and an excise tax, just up to excise tax like the Senate bill does. Take the Senate bill's gas version, the House bill, everything else, make sure it balances out, and call it a day. Because that's the best bill for everybody. And don't start with me if you're retired and you're going to have to pay an extra $1 a week. Oh, my goodness. Oh, it's a whole George Washington. How am I going to survive?
So, all right, so I'll ask you this. Are you okay with the House bill's provision to increase the sales tax, the general sales tax, from 7 to 8.5% on non-grocery items? You cool with that?
Doesn't bother me.
Okay. Me either, by the way. I'm fine with that. And I'm told, however, that in the Senate, they don't have the votes to increase the sales tax, the general sales tax, period. Just don't have the votes to do that. So that provision, I would say, is DOA in the Senate. But there is an appetite to reduce the sales tax on groceries in both houses. They do it a little differently, but there is interest in doing that on both sides. There's interest in cutting the income tax as well from both chambers. The House bill completely eliminates it, albeit over 10 years, whereas the Senate bill just cuts essentially 1 percentage point from 4 to 2.99 over 4 years. Now, we should point out that the House bill gets to where the Senate bill does on income tax in 2027, what it takes the Senate bill to 2030 to achieve. The House bill goes to 3% in 27 and then eliminates the 3% over 10 years in 0.3% increments. The Senate bill goes to from 4% to 3.75. So 0.75 higher in 27, and then down to 3.5 in 28, and 3.25 in 29, 3 and 30. So you get the benefit of the House income tax cut down to 3, which is the terminal rate in the Senate bill, in 27, rather immediately, if you will. So that again, there's clearly no consensus, and it's I'm just not sure what they're going to do. I know I've said that already several times before, but it's the truth. I really don't know. Mike from Madison says, making money great again. Yeah, well, I think you could say that with respect to no taxation of your income, because your income, making money means income. So both bills give you a break. I mean, we have to be honest about that. Both bills do reduce your current income tax burden. Compare what it was for 24, the most recent year, 4.7%. The House bill would take that to 3% in a short 2 years in 27, and the Senate bill down to 3% over 6 years from 2024 to 2030. So both of them ease the income tax burden. And I think that's
only one of them fully eliminates it.
That's
the
the
other
House
one
bill.
is more like hurry up and wait for somebody else to get around to doing it. Which is about par for the course for the Mississippi Senate.
They're, I guess, a little more cautious, a little more tentative, shall we say.
Chicken is the word I would use.
Okay. Oh, man. So, can't wait to see what happens, because they're about to take all that stuff up. And, in fact, we got Representative Sam Creekmore coming in the Element Wealth studio after the break, which is upon us. We got Fox News SuperTalk News coming your way. Now, he serves as the head of the Public Health Committee, and we'll get his thoughts on the various matters they're discussing in those committees and that are related to public health, but also get his thoughts on taxes, school choice, a couple of other things. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News in the Element Wealth studio.
When the clock strikes 12, we'll cool off and start rocking around the clock again. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock
tonight. And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. We're live in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's a gorgeous Tuesday out there. We have been due for some nice weather for sure. I'm done with all the cold and the wet. But right now, we welcome Sam Creekmore. He's a member, of course, of the Mississippi House of Representatives, represents District 14, which includes Union County, serves as the chairman of Public Health and Human Services. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming in. Good to see you, sir.
Always glad to be on. Thank you, Gerard.
Well, it didn't feel like this session was as active as last session in the sphere of public health, because last year, of course, a very contentious debate over expanding Medicaid in the state of Mississippi. Where do we stand on that?
Well, on the Medicaid, it's kind of on hold.
Okay.
With the new administration going in, the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk about Medicaid being cut.
Yep.
So the House of Representatives is kind of on a holding pattern. We got the code sections alive. If something was to break free, that we could adjust.
Okay.
But right now, we're waiting to see.
Yeah, I actually think that's wise, because there's mixed signals coming out of Washington, and it appears that they're getting closer to some sort of budget package that would come out of the House at this point. The Senate has one. They didn't really touch any of that. But the House is looking to make significant cuts to the program.
That's right. And, we're fortunate we have Drew, who was our former Medicaid director, now in the Trump administration, so we can call on him, and many other members do. So we're getting some insight from Drew Snyder.
Okay.
So that helps.
Well, until, though, they get the thumbs ups to pass legislation, you just don't know.
Yeah, just don't know. And you've been well part of the process last year with Medicaid in the legislature, and we appreciate that effort.
Well, I appreciate you including me. It's just to maybe provide some information to guide you guys more than anything else is the way I see I can provide a role. What else is going on? Because we've got the scope of practice legislation that's also very contentious, been going on a while. It feels like we just keep rehashing the same stuff.
Well, and that's true. And legislators have scope fatigue. And so we were hoping this year maybe to get something passed through, which we did in the House. And it's not a complete bill yet. There's still some more input that needs to happen. But we were able to get it through, and hopefully some other people can come to the table and help us craft this thing as it goes along the way.
Well,
I'm going to tell you, healthcare in Mississippi we're not doing a great job. I mean, not that the people in the profession aren't doing a great job. We just don't have enough. And to me, this is an access to care issue. The number of doctors we have in the state have declined since 2019. And really what we're talking about is mid-level providers. And that's defined as a healthcare professional that's not a doctor or a DO.
Okay.
And so we're talking about that mid-level, and you go in for a cold or a flu, and that's who you're going to see is a nurse practitioner, most likely.
Yeah.
And so that's we're trying to get those people more accessible to the people in Mississippi, especially in the rural areas.
And isn't it true, Representative Creekmore, we have lots of so-called healthcare deserts in our state where folks would have to drive a pretty long way to find certain medical providers.
Absolutely, and that's a real issue. And nurse practitioners the whole program was designed in 1965 in Colorado with the purpose of putting healthcare in rural areas. So, I mean, that's why the program was developed by a doctor and a nurse, and so it's kind of evolved since then, as has a physician's role. The evolution of physician has gone from more of the general practice to more specialties. There aren't many doctors that are graduating from UMMC that are going into general practice. We only have I think it's 2,007 in the state of Mississippi, and my father's one of those. But more and more when you go in for a checkup, you're seeing a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
And so if we can kind of free them up to be more accessible, I think it would help the people of Mississippi.
Okay. Do we have some legislation that would expand the scope?
House Bill 849 is that vehicle, and it has passed the House and is in Chairman Bryan's committee, and he and I had a discussion about it this morning. Yet a brief discussion, but we did have the talk, and so he's weighing the options on it right now.
Okay. Do you have a feel for that? Because I actually attended, I don't remember the bill they were taking up in the Health Committee in the Senate, but is that in the old Supreme Court room there, whatever it is? I can't remember the number, but I walked in and it's how it's configured, and you got all the doctors on one side and all the nurses on the other.
That was the AA bill.
Okay.
Anesthesiology assistant bill.
Right.
And the CRNAs were on one side and the anesthesiologists. And it kind of went south from there. Yeah. That is part of 849, though, that we did. So that part is still alive, too. We have a serious anesthesiologist provider shortage in the state of Mississippi and across our country.
Wow.
So that could possibly provide some relief by freeing up CRNAs, doing away with their collaborative, and creating the AA licensure.
Has there ever been any thought or legislation proposed, and maybe we have something I'm just not familiar with, to incentivize these specialists, these medical providers, to locate in the unserved areas?
That's a good point, and that's something we added to this bill. The Rural Physicians Program currently at UMMC is at 62 doctors, so their education's paid for, provided they go to a rural area for, I think it's 5 years. And so we increased that number in 849 to 100. So that would help provide some relief and get doctors to rural areas where they have to stay for a certain amount of time.
Okay. And this is a nationwide problem. It's not unique to the state of Mississippi whatsoever. All right. Well, what else do you guys work on that committee?
Well, certificate of need bill we passed, and that since Republicans have been in the supermajority, nothing's been done with certificate of need, and here's a real opportunity to get something done. And so we're opening up dialysis where hospitals can provide. They already provide inpatient dialysis, but they can't do outpatient. So this would change that, where they could do outpatient. Psychiatry and substance abuse clinics, it takes a CON away from that, so they can set up shop without having to apply for a CON. And it also increased the capital expenditures. If you're a hospital and you wanted to put a new parking lot in, you had to apply for a CON if it went over a certain limit. So we doubled that limit to bring it up to current really budget standards here in Mississippi.
What's your sense of where the Senate stands on this?
I think we're in a good spot. Again, that was another conversation I had with Chairman Bryan, and he was very open to it. And these are common sense, low hanging fruit initiatives that we're looking at doing with the certificate of need. As a capitalist and businessman, these make sense to me.
Yeah, it's just chipping away at it.
Yeah,
honestly,
exactly.
Have you received some pushback? I know you have. I mean, there's some strong feelings about that.
Absolutely. People in your business or my business, if I was part of a CON, I would not want to be taken out because it would eliminate any competition. It's
protection.
So yeah, we've had some pushback, but the majority of people that have been common sense, and we're not for it, but we're not going to be against it because we know it can provide better health care for people.
Yeah. Well, we got to do something about providing some medical service and coverage to these unserved areas. It's a huge problem in our state. We have a fairly large geographic area state, and 3 million people are widely dispersed across.
That's right. And if you look at the maps, the physicians and the healthcare professionals are located in the metropolitan areas, and I get it. I mean, that's where the people are. It's where the
money is.
The money is.
To be honest, especially if you're in areas where you've got a large number of uninsured or underinsured or Medicaid, which reimburses at a lower level.
That's right.
All that's a problem. And speaking of which, talking about what the federal government, how they may act in reforming Medicaid to try to cut spending, I saw that there's also a possibility of adjusting what we passed a couple of years ago, right? The governor spearheaded the Medicaid payment reform process.
Right. And that's worked fairly well.
Yeah.
I mean, the hospitals are really in much better shape than they have been, but that could be adjusted, which is a concern, real concern.
And so we're talking about, just so folks know, we're not talking about adjustments based on expanding Medicaid. We're talking about the possibility of federal dollars flowing into Mississippi decreasing for our existing base standard Medicaid program.
That they count on, they budget for right now. So that could be very significant.
And if we don't pay our match share, then we don't get the federal money, and that's about $7 billion a year, last I checked.
Substantial.
Right. If you can hang around, we keep talking. We got Representative Sam Creekmore from the Mississippi House of Representatives is in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back.
Bopping and a singing his song. All the little birds on Jaybird Street look to hear the robin go tweet, tweet, tweet. Rockin' Robin, rockin' Robin. Slow rockin' Robin, 'cause we're really gonna rock tonight.
How can RJ Young help you elevate your small to enterprise-sized businesses' copiers, printers, and scanners while cutting costs with the help of RJ Young? Now partnering with Ricoh to offer the best office printers on the market, you can focus on more important aspects of your business. Learn more at rjyoung.com. That's rjyoung.com.
TrustCare is a proud sponsor of Ole Miss Athletics. When you choose TrustCare for your urgent and primary care, you win. TrustCare clinics are staffed by friendly, experienced providers and open late. Walk in today or schedule your appointment at trustcarehealth.com. TrustCare. Feel better, faster.
We've sent that Rip Van Winkle guy to the dentist.
Hey, what? Hey, what?
And what's worse than a trip to the dentist? Your wife's paint project that you've put off. Let Seabrook Paint in Jackson and Ridgeland find that Benjamin Moore paint and a contractor that will get you back doing the important things in life, like grilling and watching sports. Seabrook, Benjamin Moore Paint, and a happy wife, happy life. Seabrook Paint in Jackson on Monument and in Ridgeland on West Jackson.
First down. Since 1910, the University of Southern Mississippi has been dedicated to preparing students for success. We are a community-engaged Carnegie R1 University, earning distinction as one of the nation's leading research institutions. From pioneering work in polymer science and engineering, ocean science, and more, to leading the way in a broad range of disciplines like cybersecurity, education, nursing, and business, Southern Miss produces graduates who are ready to make an impact in the real world and ready for life.
Hey Mississippi, Taylor with the Skills Foundation here. I've traveled all over the state meeting high school seniors eager to start their careers, and I'm pleased to tell them that Mississippi is on a roll. Our state is attracting investments like never before in industries like manufacturing, construction, energy, and IT. Right now, there's serious demand for skilled workers, meaning companies are offering higher wages than ever. And that's why we created Skills That Pay. It's all about getting more Mississippians into great careers, jobs with excellent pay and long-term benefits. And here's the best part. We're also giving out signing bonuses to help cover the cost of training essentials. With the right training, you can get Skills That Pay and start out making over $50,000 a year. Many programs can be completed in less than a year. That means that students can make money faster and avoid debt. Get Skills That Pay and take your next step towards a great career. Visit skillsthatpay.ms to learn more. Paid for by the Skills Foundation of Mississippi.
The best made-to-order lunch in Northeast Jackson is at 4th and Gold Sports Cafe. Homestyle plates full of catfish, shrimp, and rib tips, just to name a few. Eat in or carry out, DoorDash or Grubhub. Call 769-208-8283. Once again, 769-208-8283.
No filibuster, just everything you need to know to start your day smarter. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well Studio. Representative Sam Creekmore is our guest. So the arguably the highest profile legislation that is meandering its way around the Capitol right now is tax reform. You're certainly aware of that.
I am.
House Bill 1, labeled thusly because it is the Speaker's top priority for sure. And I think he's communicated that to the caucus, to the members there. It passed handily in the Mississippi House. It's been transmitted to the Senate. The Senate, on the other hand, just passed their version of a competing tax reform bill yesterday. It made it out of committee last week and then to the floor. It passed. Had, I think, 4 Republicans who voted against it, joining Democrats. What do you think is going to happen there? What are your thoughts?
You know, I think we can reach a compromise. You know, obviously, Speaker White, as you mentioned, it is top priority and evident by the first week of session, we bring it out and roll it out and get it done and send it over to the Senate immediately.
Yeah.
And so, and the way committees have been going since kind of the second half has started, everything's kind of slowed down until we see what happens with HB 1 or the Senate's proposal. I think there's room for a compromise. And I like the House bill because it addresses more than just income tax. And so the grocery tax is important to both sides. PERS is important. And this is a plan we have that will eliminate income tax over time.
Yeah.
The Senate bill does not.
Right. It stops short, terminates at 2.99% in 2030, whereas the House bill phases it all the way out by 2037.
And there's room for adjustments, but I think it's important to have that master plan out there. This is our goal at the end.
Okay.
This is what we're trying to achieve. And so I applaud the House for having that out there and putting it out there early.
What's been the reaction from your constituents?
Some of the retirees are concerned.
Sure.
The younger people, not so much. They like the idea of not having the income tax. So that it's been mixed, but it really by age.
Okay. And I think that's the same analysis I would make as far as our text line and just in the public in general, social media. That's what I've seen. It's mixed.
And I've had local leaders concerned, too. They're worried about city taxes and all going up, or property taxes, which, that's not part of this bill.
Yeah. And I wonder, because the House bill actually would provide more dollars to them. The 1.5% local option that they'd have to opt out of is more than they currently receive from the sales tax diversion of 18.5%.
Yeah, New Albany, where I'm from, I think would gain $675,000.
Okay. Well, that's significant,
so that's significant
to a town the size of New Albany.
That's right.
They can do a lot with that money, big time. Yeah, and then the counties participate under this bill in sales tax revenue.
And I think the supervisors are for it. I mean, from what I've heard, the input they've given me, they like the bill.
It'd be hard to imagine they wouldn't be, because this is a new pot of revenue they don't currently have.
That's right. And they don't have enough money as it is, so this definitely helps.
Yeah. And we should point out, I don't know if you had a chance to review the article I wrote that analyzed the legislation, and I've got a chart in there where I compare the various categories of taxes in Mississippi to the neighboring states. And Chairman Lamar's pointed this out numerous times. Mm-hmm. Even if we went to 8.5% sales tax, general sales tax, we're still lower than all the neighboring states.
Absolutely. We're very fortunate in Mississippi to have such low taxes, and even raising them. And although this is kind of you're doing away with income, so you're raising over here, but it was still positive for us compared to everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I've made that point numerous times, Representative Creekmore, that it's hard to cut taxes in Mississippi because we already have fairly low taxes.
Very low. And it's hard to provide the services, just like public health or schools, by cutting taxes and not raising it somewhere else or having another income source.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, because while the state did increase pay for teachers, now we're seeing the other states have reacted, and now we're falling behind again.
That's right. And the other thing, which I didn't point out earlier, but we address roads and bridges with the House bill, which I think is extremely important. We've never had a consistent income source other than the federal government for our roads and bridges in the state of Mississippi.
Executive Director of MDOT, Brad White, has made that point, as you well know, countless times.
Yeah.
Has he not? That we're losing out on access to some federal funds because we can't show the federal government, in accordance with all their rules and guidelines, that we have sufficient state matching dollars to pull down that money, right?
For maintenance, just general maintenance.
For basic maintenance.
And so that's important, and he's doing a great job in making each lawmaker aware of the needs we have.
Yeah. Well, any thoughts about the House choosing to increase revenue to be dedicated to roads and bridges on fuel purchases as a sales tax as opposed to increasing the excise tax? Something we hear a lot.
Yeah, it is. And the sales tax is on top of the excise tax.
Right.
So the excise tax.
Yeah, it's on the total purchase.
That's right. So, a little heartburn from that. But at the end of the day, that we got to have the maintenance. And that may be something we can negotiate out, that it's not on top of the excise tax. It's set the excise tax aside. But for the greater good of Mississippi and Mississippi roads and bridges, I think it's important that we get this done and give MDOT a revenue stream, just like we talked about with health care, that they can depend on.
They made it very clear that we're losing out on federal funds to do that. Yeah. But as you know, if you're a retired person, this isn't terribly popular because they don't get any benefit from ending the income tax because they don't pay income tax now. So they got a heck of a deal right now.
But, the retired people I talk to, it's like, this is your gift to the next generation, to your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
And former Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, always did a great job of pointing that out as well.
He did.
Justification.
And that's the other thing. This is not just something we've come up with in the past 2 years. I mean, we've been working on income tax for several years, since I've been in the legislature.
Honestly, the first bill we had in 22.
Yeah,
I thought it was the best one we've had yet,
well,
and I know it was pushed. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was great too. I mean, it was, and we've got it through the House. So it's half the legislators are doing this and are for it.
Yeah, well, we'll see where all this goes. The ballot initiative is something else that I hear a lot about in the public. I don't know if you hear that so much from your constituents, but of course you know the story there. We don't have one, even though the Constitution says we're supposed to.
And I would like to have a ballot initiative. I think it's important just for the whole process of how bills are made and laws are formed. And, we have so many people want to put things on the ballot. Well, you can't bring this subject up or you can't bring this subject up. I would just be for a ballot initiative based on the number of signatures that you got to have and what the number is, percentage that you got to get it passed by.
Okay. Well, Constitution Chairman Price Wallace had a bill teed up and basically announced a couple of weeks ago it just doesn't look like this thing's going anywhere. We're not even going to put it on the floor.
Right. Well, and I think there hadn't been a lot of public interest in it. There's been some.
Interesting.
But we're not being contacted a lot by that. Not that that's a reason not to do it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is there's been so many special interests that, let's not have abortion on there. Let's not have marijuana part of this. And if this is what the people want and you can get the signatures and the votes, then that's kind of where I am.
Okay. Mobile sports betting. Another crack at that.
Well, we have it here already.
That's right. We just ain't getting any money from it.
Mississippi legislature's not getting any money from it. And I don't get it. That's another one the House passed out last year, died on the Senate, and here again we've done the same thing. Yeah. So it's over on the Senate side to see what they can do with it. We need it. It needs to happen, and it's another revenue. We're cutting taxes, so here's a income source for the state.
Yeah, I think Representative Casey Urey, who sponsored this legislation, estimated $25 million in revenue to the state, and there's a formula for how to allocate that. I think it'd probably be more than that, and I say that because North Carolina just did that last year, and it just absolutely exceeded all expectations by a long shot.
Yeah, and it's sitting out there ready to go. We just got to get it passed.
We got to get Senator David Blunt, who heads the gaming committee over there in the Senate, to sign off on that thing.
He
get
may
it on
do
the floor.
It.
I hope so.
I saw him this morning. I'll talk to him.
I hope so. Appreciate you coming in.
Always glad to do it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Representative Sam Creekmore. He represents District 14, Union County. He's chairman of Public Health and Human Services. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
This program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. The President says, let's build that pipeline. He wants that XL pipeline built. Let's get it done. Cool. So does Canada, by the way, because that's where the oil comes from. It's transported via the pipeline down to the refinery Mecca in South Texas there. And that is the goal with the pipeline. This was in a Truth Social platform post. The president wrote, I was just thinking that the company building the Keystone XL pipeline that was viciously jettisoned by the incompetent Biden administration should come back to America and get it built in all caps now. Now, who could forget Jen Psaki? Remember her?
Old circle-back Psaki herself.
Because this happened, I mean, this is one of his first actions, was it not, to shut this thing down? And she, the press secretary, when asked, what about all these jobs that are being lost? Well, they can go code. Remember that crap? They can get green jobs in code. How did that work out, I might ask? Was that just an asinine statement or what? Let's be honest. That was just dumb. Let them go code. Right. Nothing to it. Just show up, get in front of a keyboard, and code jumps out. Man. And in the meantime, as you recall, the price of oil promptly ascended because we had less supply. We achieved nothing but inflation in this action. We hurt Americans. And this is what I got to bring up over and over again that the loony left doesn't get. You hurt the people you claim to be the champions for the most. That's who pays the price, who bears the brunt of your dumb policies.
It's because they don't really give a rat's rear end about anybody but themselves. They just manage to somehow convince the gullible, naive, and stupid to vote for them.
That's really bad. I agree. On the ceasefire text line, I'm not sure what the question is, Rhino. Help me out. It says, how do you differ a debt versus an investment when discussing T-bills?
They mean defer?
Yeah, I wondered that as well. Or do they mean what's the difference? So Treasury bills, notes and bonds, depending on the maturity of the security, those are just IOUs issued by the United States Treasury. That's why they call them T-bills, notes, and bonds to investors who loan money to the Treasury, and in exchange for that, they get a contract that says, you're going to pay me interest on this thing for the duration, the maturity, the term of the bill, note, bond, and at the end of it, you're going to give me all my money back. It's a standard bond sort of relationship. And nothing really earth-shaking about that. That's just the way it works. So when the federal government, when the Treasury issues, sells notes, bonds, bills, sells, so in exchange for the money they get from the investors, they give them a contract that says, I owe you money, and we're going to pay you interest as long as you're holding this while this thing is active until it matures, and then at maturity, I'm going to give you your money back, the original amount, the principal that you invested. And the federal government uses that to fund government. That is recorded and presented on the federal government's financial statements as a liability. It's debt. They owe the people who invested in those securities, who loaned the money government. $36 trillion to be exact. It's sitting on the Treasury's balance sheet, its financial statements, as a big old liability. Hope that answered the question. What else we got here? Our taxes should be lower since our income is lower compared to other states. Not sure those two are linked necessarily.
Well, I mean, technically it's true.
It is.
If you make less, you will pay less in taxes.
Because it's like
a percentage of the total.
It's progressive in nature is what it's called. And honestly, because of the changes made in 2022, eliminating the 4% bracket, and prior to that, I think it was 2017, the 3% bracket, is an individual, let me make sure I get this right, I think you'd have to make $18,600 before you pay any income tax. So all income above that $18,600 would be taxable, but everything below that is taxed at zero. If you're filing joint, you're married. Let's see here, it would be double that, I believe, is the latest standard deduction and personal exemption in the state of Mississippi. So you got to make a fair amount of money just to get on the scale to be subject to the income tax. Larry and Miles, could you explain to me what certificate of need means? Yeah, great question, Larry. Those it's kind of what the name implies, that you've got to prove as a healthcare institution, if you wanted to make certain investments, expand your facilities, buy certain pieces of equipment. Larry, I don't remember all the various requirements for certificate of need, but you literally have to make a proposal, if you will. You have to apply to the Department of Health in Mississippi. An MRI machine is something. You heard Representative Creekmore talk about, you just want to expand your parking lot. You want to add some beds. All those are examples. Build a new hospital. Build an emergency room. Build a new wing. I think in some cases, Rhino, even add a practice area. I'm not sure if in Mississippi, but I know that's true in other states. You literally have to get permission to do that from the Department of Health. And those laws have been in place since the 70s, originated in the state of New York. The idea, believe it or not, I know this is hard to imagine, well, if we control the supply of health care services, we'll keep the price down. It's just the opposite of what you'd think. More supply, chasing less demand usually means price comes down. The opposite means price goes up. More demand, chasing less supply. That literally was the original premise of these laws. Yeah, that industry, they don't really know how to meet demand. We got to regulate it, right? We'll tell you how many hospitals you need, how many beds you can have, how many machines you can have, how many parking spaces you can have. And it gets even more complicated than that. But there's a whole statutory process administered by the Department of Health in Mississippi. And those wishing to build a new hospital, add a wing, those are the most common situations. Buy certain diagnostic equipment, open up an emergency room, certain clinics. You heard Representative Creekmore talk about how they're kind of, trimming away at the edges a little bit, such as for, what do you say, for like psychiatric care, I think, and other rehab services, which presently are subject to certificate of need laws. You wouldn't have to get those from the Department of Health. You could just let the market work. I mean, it really is the ultimate form of protectionism and central planning of an industry. And many of us have been campaigning to completely repeal all the CON laws in the state of Mississippi for a long time, to no avail. And it looks like we're getting a little movement. I don't remember all the categories, but were you surprised to hear Representative Creekmore Rhino say, yeah, we doubled the parking lot amount so that you don't have to get a con, wait months just to go out and add some parking spaces? Is that not nuts? Completely. But yeah, I don't know that there's another industry like that that's regulated like that, right, that regulates supply. And I would say that, I'm not ashamed to say it, a couple of years ago when the legislature passed legislation that prohibits the manufacture of vehicles from selling through a dealership in the state of Mississippi if they own the dealership, that the dealership must be owned by a third party, a so-called franchisee. We have a law in Mississippi that prohibits that. I call that con, certificate of need for cars, con for cars. That's central planning of an industry. Can't the consumer figure that out? Can't we just let whomever wants to sell cars in the state of Mississippi with minimum permitting do that? Why do we have to say, nope, you can't do that, Tesla, you can't sell your cars direct in Mississippi. You got to do it through a third-party franchisee. I disagree, and I think it ignores reality of where so many markets in this country are moving, including the vehicle market. Apple, Amazon, don't be surprised if you don't see them introduced some sort of electric vehicles in the future when it's more mainstream and more practical, and they want to sell them direct. Just order it on Amazon. Final segment in the Element Wealth studio next.
Hey, this is
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
2, 3, 4.
Well, it seems like every time we head into the final segment, we always have a detractor on the text line. Is the way.
Well, you can't expect a liberal to get out of bed any time before noon.
So, we have a text here that says, "You're the ones who are stupid. Need to
Good
build
comeback there, buddy.
more refineries. They haven't built any since '78." So a couple of things. What he's talking about is, I just happened to describe the then President Biden's action as shutting down the XL pipeline as stupid. It served no purpose to do so. And now it is true that the company that was the main primary contractor of that project, I think, did in fact go bankrupt. But there are other companies, and Trump's asking, hey, surely somebody could come build this thing. I believe he's right. He's on the right track. The other thing I would say is this particular person is Pete and Amory. Obviously doesn't tune in a lot, and that's fine. But if you had, Pete, what you know is that countless times, I would say, Rhino, I've explained how the whole deal works with respect to refining capacity and the production of oil in this country and abroad, that we have different grades and categories of oil that come out of the ground, and unfortunately our refineries are more tuned to accommodate the old oil and not the dirty oil and not the light sweet crude we're getting mainly from fracking. So we end up shipping it across the ocean to refine and then bring it back over here as usable fuel. 1,000,000 times we've talked about that. We get it. We realize that. So you jumped the gun here, buddies. All I can say. We understand that. Now,
that's what happens when you spend the majority of your time simply looking for a reason to be aggrieved.
That's unfortunately the truth. But I would go on to say it's beyond that, right? Because you're not understanding that if you increase the supply of crude oil and natural gas, we're going to find a place to refine it. It may not be in this country, but in this case, this is. Because the refineries around the Houston area, they're geared for the dirtier oil, which is what's coming from Canada, which is why the environmental wackos don't want it built. Is that not exactly the case?
The same environmental wackos that not that long ago, in the grand scheme of things, were cheerleading and championing natural gas.
That's true.
Look at how green natural gas. Look at all these garbage trucks running on natural gas. Look how green they are. But now natural gas isn't good enough for them because nothing's ever good enough for the bleeding heart liberals. It's always give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Oh, my gosh. You took a snippet out of context. Isn't that what they always tell us? You got to contextualize it. And this is what happens with the liberals. They find one thing like that, and they don't really know about all the other aspects that we've enunciated and shared and talked about. We get it. We understand how it works. Really do. And now, I'll admit, I had to go do a lot of research on that to figure out, well, that doesn't make any sense. We're producing X amount, but we're using this amount. We're falling short of that, but we have enough worldwide. So what's going on? And then I realized, in doing research, there are multiple grades, 2 major grades of oil. And refineries are built to refine one or the other in general. Now, maybe a more modern refinery, should we build one, could handle both. both greats. But right now, a lot of what we're producing from fracking, which is fairly new, we never thought we'd have this problem in this country. A problem in that, wow, we got all this newfound oil. It happens to be the kind that we have to send overseas to refine. But we're still increasing the supply. Thus, the price stays moderated. That's just Econ 101 right there. Come on. On the C-Spire text line, most hospitals make you pay to park. My father's at University Medical Center in Jackson, 3 hours from home, gallbladder surgery. He's on Medicare, and they are keeping him for days and won't even give him a room because of insurance discrimination. Wow. That's Cullen on the way back from Cuomo. Interesting. Appreciate you sharing that, Cullen. Larry Mize, after we explained the CON law, said, that doesn't make any sense. We agree, Larry. It's protectionism, man. You can't say it's anything but that. Protectionism, says Andy. Yeah, it's bad. So have you asked him about universal school choice? And yes, we all know New Albany has great schools. We need competition and education also. I have privately, and I apologize, I didn't get to that during the interview. But he told me that he could support a public-to-public situation, which is what Representative Jansen Owen's bill, it would allow. He's coming on, I think, middays, if not tomorrow, on Thursday, and we're going to dig into that with him. You don't want to miss that. But that just basically means that a student is not locked into their school based on their address. If they want to go to a school outside of their assigned area, they could do that, and the home school couldn't block it. That's what that legislation would do. That's kind of step one in public-to-public. I think what you'll see the Senate do is change the legislation coming from the House to restrict that to D and F districts only. I say that because that's precisely what the Lieutenant Governor said on our show a few weeks ago when we asked him about this issue. We're out of here today. We thank you so much for joining us. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe, and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.